Hello everyone and welcome to the Roundup heading into Week 18, where we are going to go through the biggest pieces of news and go through what teams need to do to make it to the playoffs. I hope you all hoisted those fantasy championship trophies last weekend, so now let's get into the Roundup for Week 18. I hope you all raised those fantasy football championship trophies last weekend and are riding a high going into Week 18, because while most of you are going to be done with your fantasy football leagues, you may ask, hey, what's on the line for Week 18? It is incentives. Now let's go through some of the incentives that some players have for Week 18 because they want to get those big bonus checks. Let's start with none other than DeAndre Hopkins. He can earn an extra $500,000 in bonus money if he gets 7+ receptions and 40+ yards. And then, of course, he can get another $250,000 on top of that with 2 more touchdowns in this game. So the Titans, we can break this one down a little bit. The Titans have technically nothing to play for. They are eliminated from playoff contention, but they are going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who could get Christian Kirk back. It looks like Trevor Lawrence is trending in the right direction. But if we remember last season, the Jaguars are the team that knocked the Titans out of potentially going to the playoffs. So if you think that Mike Vrabel and company are going to just lay down and let this Jaguars team walk into the playoffs, I think we have another thing coming. So make sure to look out, though, for DeAndre Hopkins in this game. Another one I want to talk about here is Baker Mayfield. I mean, Baker has been baking. He is potentially going to get this team to the playoffs. The one thing, though, here is that if he does get this team to the playoffs, he gets $1 million because of it. So let's see if this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team can go and take care of business against the Carolina Panthers. They should, but stranger things have happened. And then one other one that I want to point out is Devin Singletary. He can get up to $250,000 if he hits 1,100 total yards. Right now he's at 1,026, so that is definitely something to watch out for those Houston Texans, even though that's going to be a good game no matter what. So incentive season, let's see what these guys can do this weekend. Speaking of getting those championship trophies, let's break down a guy who probably helped you at least make it to the finals and hopefully win the whole thing in Kyren Williams. So, of course, with fantasy awards, we could talk about the MVP. We could talk about who we think was the biggest bust of the 2023 season. But I think Ian Hartitz does a phenomenal job right here with his article at fantasylife.com to highlight Kyren Williams as the most improved fantasy player this season. So let's dive into some of the numbers right here on the Board Pro 75. He finished with just 30.5 total PPR points during his rookie season. And we kind of already know what comes next. We had him 255 PPR points in 2023. So when you look at it, it is a league high 224.5 point upgrade among all non-quarterbacks, which is phenomenal, especially for where you probably drafted or even maybe picked him up off the waiver wire. So when you look at it, only Browns running back Jerome Ford, Breece Hall, Nico Collins, Gus Edwards were even within 100 points of this level of improvement. So it's really a hat tip to Kyren Williams and what he was able to do with the Rams this season. When you keep looking at the numbers too, to just make the case even better, only Christian McCaffrey outscored Kyren Williams on a per game basis. So Kyren Williams, congratulations on a phenomenal season. You are definitely the most improved fantasy player going into this season, and I am really excited to see where he ends up going in drafts in 2024. We've got a lot of teams heading into Week 18 with a ton on the line. One of them being they need to win this game to be able to find themselves in the playoffs. So let's go through some of those scenarios. All right, so now let's go through the playoff picture for the NFC and AFC heading into Week 18. Let's start off here with the 49ers. They've got a 12-4 record. They already locked up the #1 seed, so they will get that first round bye. The Eagles just lost to the Arizona Cardinals, which honestly was shocking. So we would like to see them get a win this weekend against the Giants. They have an 11-5 record, the Eagles do. The Detroit Lions, I don't think we need to go through again what happened last week against the Cowboys. Dan Campbell has come out and said they are not resting their starters. So they're going to go up against the Minnesota Vikings and hope to get a little bit of a better seeding heading into the playoffs. So you will see them at full strength this weekend. I think the only question is for how long, depending on what that score looks like towards the end of that game. The Cowboys are playing for the title here, the division title, that is, going up against the Washington Commanders, so we could probably expect that to be a pretty lopsided game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going for the division title as well. They need a win against the Carolina Panthers this weekend. The Rams are already in the playoffs. Sean McVay has said that he is resting starters, so they're pretty much good to go. The Seattle Seahawks need to win their game this weekend, and they need a little help from others. Like, they need the Bears to beat the Packers, even if the Seahawks win their game. So that is something to definitely keep an eye on. And then the Minnesota Vikings, we already talked about. The Packers, again, they need to win their game, and then they are in the playoffs. But again, they're going up against a red-hot Bears team. So I don't think we should count out the Bears in this one. I think they're at least going to put up a fight. But we've seen Jordan Love look really good for these past few weeks. So that is something, again, to keep an eye on. And then Saints-Falcons, it's kind of the same thing. If the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win, then these two teams are out, is the easiest way to put it. So now if we keep going down here, we're going to go and talk about the AFC and what that's going to look like this weekend. And let's start here with the AFC playoff picture. So again, Ravens at the top, we already know what that means. That means that they have secured the #1 seed. They will get a first round bye in the playoffs. The Dolphins are facing the Bills. The Dolphins are already in the playoffs, but they definitely want to win this game to get that division title. This is a huge game, probably the favorite of the weekend on Sunday night, so a good one to watch. The Chiefs have already said they're resting starters. You're not going to see Patrick Mahomes, probably not Travis Kelce either. So one to still watch, but they're already locked and loaded for the playoffs. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they are playing for the division title as well. They're going up against the Tennessee Titans, who we talked about a little bit earlier in this show. I don't think the Titans are just going to lay down and let them walk into the playoffs, so this could be a really good game, especially depending on how Trevor Lawrence's health is, if they get Christian Kirk back for this one. Keep going here. The Browns are already in the playoffs. They're resting starters this weekend. The Bills, we already talked about, going up against the Miami Dolphins. Should be a phenomenal game on that one. Colts-Texans. This, to me, this is my favorite game of the weekend because this is so simple. You win, and you're in. So with these two teams, you get CJ Stroud back. The Colts are going to, try and put everything they can out there with Gardner Minshew. So I'm really excited for this one to see how they do. And then the Steelers, kind of like the same thing that we talked about with Seattle. They are playing at the Ravens. They need a little bit help, a little bit more than just winning this game. But let's just say a win is a good place to start. So that is what the playoff picture looks like heading into Week 18. We talked about teams that may be resting their starters this weekend, but what about a sneaky upside running back for Week 18? Dwayne McFarland is going to tell us who it is.
Still, when we look at the averages, it's 13.2 fantasy points per game with an average finish of running back 19. So a top 24 play in PPR and half PPR formats, which wasn't something that I expected. And just to give you a little bit of a better idea of the comps that were close to the profile that we have for Tyjae Spears, we had Giovanni Bernard in 2013, averaged 14.1 fantasy points per game. And then Chase Edmonds in 2021, his final year with the Cardinals, he was on the low end of the spectrum at 12.1 fantasy points per contest. Based on all of this information, I have upgraded Tyjae Spears to a high-end running back 3 moving forward. Now, you could argue that I should really have him in that low-end running back 2 conversation based on all of the data that we just talked about. I would feel more comfortable doing that if he was getting a little more work inside the 5-yard line. So I think there's some boom-bust to Tyjae Spears' nature here. Probably going to have to break off a long run, get in a shootout type of game script, but only $4,600 on DraftKings. So even if we're calling him a high-end running back 3, that is priced a bit low, and the Titans are taking on the Jaguars this weekend. The Jags need to win to get into the playoffs. Tennessee is not the type of team that I think will want to lay down and rest their starters. I think Mike Vrabel, his message to his team will be, let's try to keep the Jaguars out of the playoffs. Let's ruin their party. Our party's over, but we can still spoil it for someone else. So I really like Spears from that capacity.
All right, time for one of our favorite times during the show. Time to go through our Underdog Pick'em plays for Week 18. And as always, I have to remind you, make sure you go to UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code LIFE because they will match your first deposit of up to $100. So again, make sure you go and use that promo code LIFE. Now let's go and make our best plays for the weekend. All right, now that we're all logged in at UnderdogFantasy.com and we use that promo code, let's go through our favorite plays. Again, I'm going to tail Jeff on these because he has been doing a phenomenal job. FantasyLife.com to go and check out the bet tracker and all his underdog plays for the weekend. Let's start off here with Tony Pollard. I know that Tony Pollard has been disappointing, especially in fantasy this season, but I like this higher than 60.5 rushing yards. We like to play to 63.5 because our Fantasy Life projection has him at 65.6 yards this weekend. Like we said, it's been a rough year. He's just averaging 3.01 yards per carry over his last 4 starts. The Cowboys need to win this game, though, for Week 18. And I like to look at them despite only going up against the Commanders. I think this is a good spot for him to go up and say, hey, I don't want to end this season on a bad note. I think that they're going to come out hot against this Commanders team and get the win. So I really like this call out here. The next one I want to skip down to is, I think personally, one of my favorites for Josh Allen this weekend. Higher than 243.5 passing yards. We want to play to 247.5. We have him projected at 255.5 passing yards. So again, I think this number is way too low. They're going up against a Miami defense that was just lit up by Lamar Jackson in his MVP campaign. I think that the Bills, again, are going to win this game, so I think they're going to come out hot as well, and I think they're going to be able to do the same thing to this Miami defense that, not to the same level, but the same thing that Lamar Jackson and this Ravens team did and walk out of there with a win. So those are our favorite plays for the weekend. Again, make sure you go to UnderdogFantasy.com, make sure you use the promo code LIFE and get your first deposit match up to $100. All right, that was the roundup for Week 18. As always, thank you so much for joining me here. I hope you enjoy a great weekend of football. And as always, make sure you go to FantasyLife.com, go subscribe to our newsletter, go check out all of our articles and all of our tools and best bets 100% free. And we'll see you next time.